Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, October 7th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Maryland game is in 2 days. The game against Michigan in 51 days. On yesterday's show, I mentioned that the plan was to have Russ Fulton on today's show. That timing didn't work out, so we'll try to get him on for another show later in the week. But don't worry, my old standby Buckeye Scoop beat reporter, Tony Gerdeman, is here to save the day. He writes one of my favorite features on the site. It's called What I Think, What I Know, What I Wonder. And he had a couple really interesting thoughts in there for this week that I wanted to discuss. I was going to have him on later in the week. We'll just have him on today. That's fine. Tony, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. I had to switch a lot of things around to make this happen, but I know you are appreciative.
You're texting me every 15 minutes. Hey, can I come on the Morning Scoop sometime? I was like, you're just on yesterday. Calm down. Settle down. The people like you, but not that much. I don't particularly. I've never cared for you, but that's fine. That's neither here nor there. We're here to do a podcast. We're going to do a podcast. We're professionals by the strictest term, definition of the term anyway. You made a comparison in your column this week about the running back situation that I wanted to start with. You said that Mayan Williams has a chance to be what Mike Weber was to the 2017 and 2018 Buckeyes. So what did you mean by that?
What I meant by that is you've got a guy in Mayan Williams who started this season and was the starter for 2 games, just similar to almost a condensed version of Mike Weber, who was the starter for the Buckeyes in 2016. And then Mike Weber gets to 2017, is injured a little bit in camp and kind of loses his spot, and then very much loses his spot when J.K. Dobbins takes it. And you're seeing that same thing happen this year with Travion Henderson, have that big 270-yard game and has now taken over that job because I don't see anybody stealing it back from him or working for it to take it from him. And so now you've got this Mayan Williams situation where, and to call it a situation, it's not a situation. It's just, what does he do now to try to get back to his role or to a large role? And even when he was starting, it was still like 11 carries in one game or something like that. How does he work to get back to that? And that's where I go back to Mike Weber, who in 2018 2018, after J.K. Dobbins' freshman year, 2018, Mike Weber was the plan B or the second guy in that room behind J.K. Dobbins, but he fought and he worked, and there were times where he led the team in rushing. I think he finished with 954 yards rushing that year as the second fiddle, if you will. But there are many times during that season where he was the first chair. You think of the Michigan State game where he was the guy, and he averaged more yards per carry, and he established himself. But you could also see signs during his career at Ohio State. He wasn't so thrilled to be behind J.K. Dobbins so much.
Yeah, he's a really interesting figure in Ohio State football. He had just a weird history, just starting with, his recruitment, and then he signs, and then Stan Drayton immediately leaves. And he had that one badly timed injury where he tore his hamstring right before the season in 2017 and never really got the full blown starting job back. So he's an interesting sort of case study. You had an interesting stat in there. Mayan Williams has 249 rushing yards this season. 141 of those came on just 5 carries. The other 27 times he's run it, he's gained just 108 yards, which you did the math, so I didn't have to. Exactly 4 yards per carry. You have to love that explosiveness, but you also, in a crowded room, in a room that loaded with talent, you have to kind of be able to do better than that because there are other guys that are doing better than that. So where do you think things rank on the depth chart behind Henderson right now? I mean, Travion Henderson, clearly number 1, but then you got Marcus Crowley, Master Teague, Mayan Williams. Where do those guys rank in your mind right now behind Henderson on that depth chart?
That's a great question. And it seems like it's probably Master Teague right now as the number 2 guy because he is the most reliable guy. He's been healthy. He has been there. He's been a constant. Even when he's not getting the ball, he's still ready and there. Mayan Williams, I think, is the number 2 guy if he's healthy and he's had good practices and he had an illness. Sounds like he's dealing with another type of injury this past week. So he needs to get back, get right, and also just be hungry again and not let the fact that the job is now somebody else's affect him negatively. And this is something we have been talking about for weeks. How is Travion Henderson going to impact what Mayan Williams does? We saw how Trey Sermon impacted Master Teague, and I don't know that Master Teague just kept working and kind of accepted his role. Not happy about it, but is going to continue to work for carries. Mayan Williams, how has he accepted his new role? And he's only really played one game since this has all happened. So, where is he? I think he is the number 2 guy when all is going well, but can all go well. And then you have Marcus Crowley sneaking up from the rear. And I think showing that he's as hungry as he's ever been. The opportunities are there for him. They put him out in the game for a swing pass, completely out of the blue, to pick up a first down. So he's probably building some confidence and seeing like, hey, if I just keep busting my butt in practice, I'm going to be able to play. And if other guys aren't, then they're going to play less. And really, it all comes down to practice and who is performing the best during the week. And then once they get out there, they have an opportunity for more carries. But that 4 yards per carry on his on 27 carries for Mayan Williams, that's not very good. That's, in fact, it's almost bad. And that's not who he is, I don't think. So you get him going again, and he's my number 2 on this team, but I don't know that he has passed Master Teague at this point, because Master Teague is just, they know what they're going to get, and they get it each week. And I think it just depends on what Mayan Williams is doing during the week. And, we'll see where he stands. We'll see who the first guy is or the second guy is in this week, and we'll know more then. But I don't know if we'll know the entire answer, because it just keeps fluctuating.
And that's what makes that such an interesting question to me, is it feels like just because you might have the answer right on a Wednesday or a Thursday, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the answer on Saturday. And it definitely doesn't mean it's going to be the answer the Saturday after that. There's a lot of movement in there, because it's a talented room. It's a deep room. It was 6 guys before the season, and then Steel Chambers moves to linebacker. And you feel like Evan Pryor is talented, but, needs to put on some weight. He's not big and strong enough yet to really be a reliable every down guy. But the other 4 guys there, it's like Henderson's 1. I feel pretty confident in that. Behind them, you could just kind of like pick names out of a hat, and in any given week, it's like, sure, yeah, that could be it. Maybe. We talked about this a little bit on Buckeye Weekly after the Rutgers game, but this sure seems like a team that could go down as having like 2 or 3 of the best true freshman performances ever in Ohio State history by the time the season is over. Travion Henderson, obviously one of those guys, and you feel like we still haven't really seen what he truly can do. It's like you keep seeing flashes, but you haven't seen multiple 20 carry games. When you do, it's like if he has 20 carries and he runs for 280 yards, would that surprise you? Like it wouldn't shock me if he has 20 carries and he runs for 3, breaks. If he breaks the school rushing record this year, it wouldn't completely shock me. He probably needs more than 20 carries to do that, and he's just one of them. It's just, you go around the field and it's like, this is a freshman class that is going to like ruin Ohio State fans for freshman classes for years to come. Cause it's like, well, why doesn't this class have an elite running back and a lockdown corner and multiple great, defensive linemen? Like what's wrong with this bunch of bums? They're playing like everyone else's freshmen. This is just like, this is a completely abnormal freshman class for Ohio State.
It is. And just how we saw people be spoiled by Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins, and you see CJ Stroud throwing some incompletions. You're like, incompletions? This is not what I've come to expect from Ohio State quarterbacks. Yeah, they're gonna be signing these guys corners next year, and it's like, how come they're redshirting corners? And it's like, well, that's many good corners have redshirted. Marshawn Lattimore, Garyon Conley, Eli Apple, Bradley Roby. It's normal. It's not normal for Denzel Burke to be starting as a true freshman at cornerback. I think we've said the last time it happened was maybe William White 40 years ago for the Buckeyes. So this isn't something that just happens to start a season opener and then continue to not just start, but play really well. And then we've seen JT Tuimoloau start the last couple of games, just being a solid guy there. Tyleik Williams obviously continuing to blow up and play more and more, leading the team in sacks, and is just, these are guys, and not even getting into the receivers, the 5-star receivers, and Marvin Harrison and Donovan Jackson. Kyle McCord has already thrown for a 300-yard game as a true freshman quarterback. So this is all completely abnormal. But man, when you look at what they're going to be, and you're not even talking about Ja'Kalen Johnson and Jordan Hancock, the two corners who were ranked way ahead of Denzel Burke, but the amount of production they're getting from these guys, I think it doesn't really seem like there's any reason for concern for a freshman wall at this point, because they seem so advanced and so mature and so talented. I mean, we'll see if they hit it, but at this point, it just feels like this is who they are, and they're just going to keep getting better.
You know, the flip side of that crazy good freshman class is something else you wrote, which, and here, I'm going to quote you back to you. Ready? Quote, I wonder how many veterans this freshman class is going to chase into the transfer portal after the season, especially with so many players having a free year from last year. You know, you have the positive of all these freshmen are doing great stuff. The negative is you've got these upperclassmen getting potentially passed up by someone younger. At that point, it's going to be tempting to kind of pull the ripcord. Not everyone does it. I mean, Marcus Williamson, we talked to him earlier in the week, and Marcus Williamson was asked, you know, you kind of get passed up. You lost a starting job. Why'd you not transfer? He's like, he wanted to see this out. He wanted, you know, this is where he wants to be. He wanted to see this out. So this is not automatically everyone's going to leave. But, you know, if that is sort of one of the things that we look at, like who might transfer, like that's one of the things you kind of look for. So you get the sense that this roster could be very young and quite different again next year. And, you know, to me, that's something that's going to be tough for them to keep up with long term, you know, almost no matter how good the recruiting is, if you constantly have the young classes.
Yeah, and we don't like start naming names about who's going to transfer, but it's easy to imagine a veteran getting passed by a true freshman that they're going to want to go look to play. And I was thinking about this the other day. The guys who just stick around, I think sometimes they also maybe people are like, why are you still here? Like there's a negative connotation to it. Like, aren't you good enough to go play somewhere else? It's like when the NBA looks at 4-year college players and they're like, why didn't you leave early? You must not be that good. If you had to play all 4 years in college, you know, we're going to have to go for somebody else who has more potential. Somebody not so known, and maybe let's shoot for something a little bit with more upside. And you've got these guys that stick around for 4 or 5 years who help that leadership, help that depth, but then also you've got the guys who don't. And I think you're gonna Ryan Day wants as many 5th-year seniors as they can have on this team, but these guys are getting passed up, and they're going to continue to get passed up. And that, how do you replace them? Through recruiting, through the transfer portal, there's going to be some give and take there. We'll see. Will they be able to sign a few extras because of the transfer portal rule, the scholarship rule that is going to be in place, I think, pretty soon. But yeah, I mean, this is the way of the world now, especially when transfers are normal now. You bring in a bunch of guys who have bypassed them and recruited over players, and of course they're going to leave and they want to play. And you've got another class in next year who could jump them as well. So it's getting harder and harder for guys who, if you haven't played by year 3 or 4, even by year 3, then, 4 and 5, you almost have to be selfish with it, and or not even selfish, but go find it somewhere else, because at a place like Ohio State, they're trying to recruit over everybody. Mm-hmm. And if there's already 1 or 2 classes ahead of you, I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Right. And it's like, you start to wonder if you've seen the end of 5th-year seniors at Ohio State, because if you are coming in and starting early, you are very often a 3 and done player at Ohio State, or at least a 4 and done player. Mm-hmm. And if you come in and you're not starting and you're 3 years into your career, a lot of times those are the guys who are going to be looking at the portal. So, how many more 5th-year seniors are you going to see 5 years from now? I think that's kind of an interesting thought experiment, because you're on one end of that spectrum or another, it seems like, in a lot of cases. And it's going to be a lot of probably linemen and guys like that who take a little while to develop, where you're not necessarily expecting to play a couple of years in. Another thing that I thought was really interesting, you wrote, I'm going to quote you again here. I know this season has been a humbling thing for Kerry Combs, but I can see him surviving this and agreeing to stick around as the Buckeyes cornerback coach beyond this season. To me, that seems like the best possible case scenario for Ohio State. You can explain why that would be, real important, but what makes you think that Combs would agree to do that? Why do you think that that's a possibility?
For years, we've heard Kerry Combs talk about how the defensive staff can't have egos, and it's a bunch of collective ideas, and everybody is a coordinator. This is long before he was ever a coordinator, long before he was an assistant defensive coordinator in his last year at Ohio State or so, and certainly long before anything we're seeing now. So I am to believe that even though these are guys who are well known, make good money, and are well thought of, that if you have egos that are immense, then you're not, not a lot of people are willing, like excited to work with you, work for you, play for you. So I am of the belief that this is I don't want to say egoless thing, but I think Kerry Combs' ego would has allowed him to still stick around at Ohio State and be openly demoted, essentially. I mean, he's lost some duties, and his players know that. But he's an Ohio guy. He said that forever. I'm an Ohio guy. He's been around a long time. He definitely has value at Ohio State. Just look at the recruiting he's done. Look at the way the corners are playing. Look at Denzel Burke and just the past, the present, the future of the position is in good hands, and a lot of that is because of him. And so I can see him staying. And does he want to? I mean, he's got grandkids; they're all over the place. At some point, he's probably going to want to step away. He's never. He doesn't strike anybody as, gosh, he sure has lost some energy. Like that's, I don't know if that's ever going to be the case. But this is a guy who has been at Ohio State a long time. Obviously loves it. Does Ryan Day want to keep him around? Has there been too much? I don't want to say friction, but has so much happened that they can't reconcile, or it's just best to move on? Kind of like with Greg Schiano, it just felt like it was best for everybody to move on. But with this, I don't think Kerry Combs would be looking to automatically leave. Like I think they're willing to talk.
All right, I'm going to let you go on this one. Over under 1.5 defensive coaching changes after this season. And we're going to throw this out there. This is not how many guys are going to get fired. This is 1.5 defensive coaching changes. So that can be someone goes and gets, a position coach gets a coordinator job somewhere else, or a coordinator gets a head coaching job somewhere else. It could be, whatever. Over under 1.5 defensive coaching changes after this season.
If it was 1/2, I would take the over. If it's being 1.5, I'm probably still taking the over, just because it's been a quiet off, not quiet off season, but things eventually you got to shake some stuff up. And after a rough year, that might be the best time to do it. So I don't like it, Tom, but I will take the over, because I think there's going to be some stuff happening in terms of, like, it's time. I think, if it's not broke, break it, is what Jim Tressel once said. This is kind of broken. Now maybe they're fixing it, but that doesn't mean you can't make it better with some new blood, or maybe somebody's going to go take a defensive coordinator position somewhere, or somebody's going to, just maybe they're looking for something new and they go do that, or maybe Ryan Day is looking for something new. It could be any reason. So I guess I will take the over.
Yeah, I went back and forth on that. I thought over, 0.5 is an easy over. 1 is, it's very easy to say push on 1, and then 1.5 is where you really start kind of rubbing your temples and thinking real hard. And yeah, it could go a couple different ways, but I think we have seen from Ryan Day, he is not afraid of change at this point. And, sometimes it takes a loss, but then, you get that one loss, and he will jump into action and change things when maybe other people would not be willing to do that change horses in midstream, so to speak. So yeah, that'll be very interesting to watch after the season. And there's a lot of variables that will go into that decision that have not happened yet. So that we could at the end of the year be saying 1.5 is way too low. It's, is it 2.5? And they could go very well, and they could say run it back next year. That's also a possibility. So we'll be keeping track of that, and we'll be keeping track of a whole bunch of other interesting stories at BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a fantastic team of insiders that provides insight and analysis you just can't get anywhere else. A very vibrant and lively community on our Ask the Insiders board. It's all at BuckeyeScoop.com. Consider becoming a member today. And if you're watching this on YouTube, click on the little bell to subscribe to our channel. Then you get notified every time we post a new podcast, every time we post a new player interview, coach interview, pregame show, postgame show. All that stuff is for free. It's all great content. It's all at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. And if you can also click on the little circular Buckeye Scoop logo that's going to pop up in just a second on this video, and that will allow you to subscribe to our channel as well. Then you get notified every time we post a new video, every time we go live, so you never miss a thing. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.